Auth66, day 12. Yeah, so if you're counting, you're probably going, why day 12? I have not missed a day, but I did mislabel one of the days and it caused me to get confused. So I'm technically missing a day 12, like I missed a day, not by not posting, but by the labeling. So I'm gonna do day 12 all over again. And I think this will probably end up being in a couple of videos, but let's call this one kind of where my brain starts with strategic planning 101. So being in operations, it means a lot of things, but strategic planning is a huge part of that. And I have a process. I don't think it's like anything special. I think a lot of people, have their own process, and there's probably pieces of this that look similar. But I'd like to share what mine is, because I think it's always good to get an understanding of how somebody else does it. So I always start out by, I have a very, a jumbled mind in the sense that a lot of things can be happening at the same time. I like to think about things. Sometimes I can think about 7 things at one time. So I just need to do an info dump. I need to put everything that I've thought about down on a piece of paper. And, sometimes my brain will run through an entire marketing strategy, or it'll run through distribution stuff, and it just does what it does, and I kind of have to let it go, but I need to retain that somehow. So once I've had this barrier, this line of how many things I've thought about, I start going, okay, I've got to the limit of what I can retain and still remember. I need to get it down on paper. So I'll just do an info dump. And I'm very thankful to work with someone who's able to do that alongside of me. And usually what happens is we will make headings that the ideas belong underneath, that consider all sides, right? So, you can't just think, this is the solution. You have to consider the solution for each department. You have to consider the solution for the client side. If it involves a new product, like what the go-to-market looks like, just different aspects. Oh, there's a car alarm going off. Yeah. So you have to kind of fit it into that. Some headings might be marketing, might be service delivery, whatever it might be. You have to kind of put those in the right bucket so that, one, you're identifying all the buckets that should exist, so that if you haven't thought about something, right? And they're usually pretty common, so we reuse the same ones. But then we fit it under the heading, and then we can kind of make a plan, because the next part is deciding on phases. So whenever I'm trying to do something new, what I create is going to require iterations. It's going to require phases in order to test my theory, to see it in action, to see whether or not it works the way I think it should work. And, those phases are kind of a good idea to create stops before you even get started, because you don't want to be going, okay, that's it. This is the way we do it. This is the way we're going to do it forever. If you identify that this is phase 1, and when we get done and we've implemented it and we have a couple months of data maybe, then you can turn around and say, okay, what went well? What do we want to keep? What might we want to change? What needs tweaking? Because not everything will be exactly the way you imagined it. You need to see that in action, right? And then one of the other things is that before you go out and you implement any of these thoughts or ideas, you really need to make sure that there's clarity on the vision of what you're hoping to achieve. What does the end result look like? What are we looking to do? Let's say you wanted to add another $1 million in recurring revenue in the next year, right? Having clarity on what that looks like and how you're going to get it. You can't just say, I want to add it. You have to say, I want to add it in this segment. I want to add it by doing, these 5 things in marketing. And okay, great. But you can do 5 things in marketing, but then how much of those 5 things you need to do to get to that number if your percentages and your data says that your close rates are X, right? So you have to kind of make sure that there's reality alignment on those items, because it has to be realistic. And I mean realism, but also with the mission and values. If you've put yourself out there as a company that cares about sustainability, let's say, and it requires you to do things that are unsustainable or that might be damaging to the environment or to your community, that aren't necessarily, maybe damaging is the wrong word, but maybe doesn't consider them the way that you should when you're considering sustainability, then that doesn't align with your values, right? So it might be possible, but it doesn't mean that you should do it because it doesn't align with your values. And then there's also the question of identifying priorities, right? even in amongst what you're doing, let's say you had a larger project and you were going to be trying to do something new. If you knew that there was a part of it that was more risky that might stop the entire project, I would usually start with that, because you want to see if that's even possible before you get further into it, because all the other work that you could do, like imagine that you went and you created like packaging, for this widget, you made a website, you came up with the entire marketing plan, and then like your manufacturing didn't work. Like that would be a terrible way to go about it. You need to do the proof of concept first, right? And that's true for processes in the same way that it's true for products, in my opinion. You need to walk it through to make sure that it's realistic, that it's not going to cause more problems that you're trying to solve. And then when you're building it, like I alluded to before, is you need to have these milestones, right? Like whether you have phases, milestones, whatever your approach is, maybe you have both. We have both depending on, what it is we're doing. It's important to have those times built in to break down the overall goal into something smaller, so that you can check weekly to see if you're going to hit your task, or if you need to adjust, or how you kind of move the needle from there. And I think when I think about all these things, it seems kind of simple. I mean, it seems simple to me because processes are simple to me, but I don't know if other people who aren't doing it day in, day out, or maybe who haven't, or maybe who aren't, I don't know the word controlling, I don't like the word controlling, but don't have the same need for structure or appreciation for structure as I do. I don't know if they would look at those things as necessary, but I do. I think, clarity in general comes from information. It doesn't have to be red tape. It doesn't have to be onerous. Just having something where, the overall goal is to evaluate and make sure that the fit is right, and not just be going with our guts. The things should be rooted in data. They should be rooted in proof, in order for us to spend the time that we do on them. And I mean, to me, that's just good business, but I think lots of business works in different ways. It's just my little advice about strategic planning. I'm sure there's probably a couple of these things that we'll dive into a little bit deeper, but that's my, if I was going to give you an overall 60,000 foot view, that would be my way to think about it. Day 12, though tomorrow will somehow be day 17, I think. Anyway, apparently I'm terrible at counting. See you guys tomorrow.